My name is Kai. My pronouns are he, they, and I'm a PhD candidate at UWA and the Kids Research Institute Australia.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi everyone, I'm Felicity Austin and I use she, her pronouns. I'm an accredited exercise physiologist and I am the operations manager at Thriving in Motion. So a summary on the research project that we've been conducting. So we have been looking at the exercise and eating behaviours of trans and gender diverse adults within Australia.
Yeah. We have been undergoing quite a suite of studies. So 2 scoping reviews, qualitative study, mixed methods study, experimental lab study, really kind of just trying to approach the topic from every methodological lens.
Yeah. It keeps growing, doesn't it? As we go, we keep going, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do that.
Yeah, it's each findings from the previous study kind of informs new gaps. We just keep finding new things we don't know and then going and investigating them.
Yep, it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's like the whole project was initially funded as part of kind of a very niche grant to try and find answers in areas that we don't know very much about. And what we do or did know at the time was that transgender diverse people have really high rates of eating disorders and disordered eating, but very little information on the why. So, the kind of broad premise of this entire project and all the sub-projects was really about understanding the unique risk factors and the specific experiences of what's going on beneath the statistics of the experiences of transgender diverse people, both in terms of their eating behaviors that are problematic or disordered, but also kind of a flip of that to actually look at what's healthy and what we can do to promote good behaviors and healthy behaviors that make people's lives better, not just sort of what's wrong and how we make those things better.
Yeah, I think that's a really good last point as well. Like, what do we know? What do we not know? And then finding that out specifically from the trans and gender diverse people themselves, and also the stakeholders that work with them and work within the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I think our scoping reviews kind of figured out what the research that was already existing told us, what we knew, and also identified a lot of gaps in what we did not know.
Yep.
And then we kind of set out to fill some of those gaps. And in those qualitative pieces where we talked to people, lived experience, and the people that care for them, we found even more gaps that were of high priority to those people. And so then the study after that is about trying to understand and fill those gaps. And what's really exciting is like our little team here in little old Perth, Western Australia is doing research that is sometimes world first information. We still have no idea the answers to these questions. And we are sometimes the first people to actually try and find out.
Some of the findings that we've been reporting and writing on today, I suppose looking at our qualitative study, Kai, some of the themes coming out of that were looking at neurodivergence within the population, looking at gender-affirming care within the population and what that looks like and what that might need to look like. And what else was there, Kai?
I think those 2 are some of the really key pieces. Is we took a much more intersectional lens than has been done in other research, and an entire sub-theme or an entire theme of our one paper was around neurodivergence because that came through so strongly. And we didn't just look at, how these 2 things exist and contribute to eating behaviors, but actually how being both trans and neurodivergent together creates unique experiences that are not found in people who are just trans or just neurodivergent. Like one that I've been stuck on ever since and have now got side projects on is really around understanding interoceptive awareness in gender diverse people and neurodivergent gender diverse people and the role of that in eating behaviors. So every little finding has little pockets we have to keep doing further studies in. I think for me, with my PhD being focused on eating disorders and eating disorder treatment specifically, our qualitative study has really unique findings and some world first findings around what is not working in treatment right now for trans people when they do present for eating disorder specific treatment. Really some of the key gaps and some of the real harms treatment is doing in its current form. But fortunately, that study and the other ones that we're doing also have a lot of recommendations about what to do about it, not just what's wrong.
So I think some of the key findings when looking at gender affirming care were that a lot of the young people were kind of displaying disordered either eating or disordered exercise behaviours because they were unable to access the care, or the care that they were accessing wasn't tailored for them.
Yeah, I think it's a really key area that there was very little previous data on, showing that essentially, especially in the current political climate where there's lots of bans or attempted bans on puberty blockers for trans young people, our research and some other studies have found that when trans young people can access puberty blockers, they still suppress their own puberty, but they do it by restricting their food to such an extent that their body shuts down hormone production. And so I think we have this really key piece of advocacy from our work that shows that when we ban puberty suppression, we don't actually prevent young people from suppressing their own puberty. We just stop them from being able to do so safely and with good medical supervision of it.
I think some of the biggest gaps that we're learning about and from our research and need to work on in the exercise point of view is that I think, yes, exercise can be gender affirming, but then sometimes people are actually also using exercise too much, and we're seeing compulsive exercise or disordered exercise being more prevalent in the population. So how can we as exercise physiologists help and support them and work on that gap?
Yeah, if I remember correctly from our mixed methods study, it was somewhere almost right around nearly 1/4 of the sample had compulsive exercise on the compulsive exercise test, which, based on our scoping review, was one of the measures that had never been used with trans people before. So we really didn't know the level of compulsive exercise that we find in trans people. And the motivations for that exercise being compulsive seem to differ from cisgender people as well, based on the mixed methods study, that it's less about external pressures and more about internal pressures related to identity and sense of self and congruence in a way that isn't seen in the cisgender population, which it seems to be a little bit of internal, but a lot more about those external pressures and the reward of bodily change from the outside and how other people treat you as a result of that.
And what do you think about the eating disorder gaps, or can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think our qualitative study really launched a lot of the work in my PhD and beyond, in that it would seem the entire treatment model, like at the foundational level, if we imagine like what the cement is that the whole building's built on, is body acceptance. So, at least in eating disorder context, body acceptance frameworks, the idea is your body does not need changing. It's okay the way it is. It's about accepting it and learning to be okay with it as it is. But when we're talking about a group of people who require gender-affirming care, which is a kind of body change to be comfortable and okay, and there's plenty of research to kind of back that up, we're actually doing immense harm if we're telling people that they don't need to change their bodies in an eating disorder treatment context, to the extent that, like, whilst our paper doesn't call it as such, the more I look into it, the more it's clear that what we're doing right now when we do treatment with trans people without any adaptation, it's conversion practices. Like, we're trying to tell people that their identity is not real, or that they don't need to transition, and trying to prevent people from doing so, which is incredibly harmful and counterintuitive when we know that from our own data and beyond, one of the key things that helps with the eating disorders in trans people when dysphoria is a factor is that gender affirming care and bodily change makes a huge difference.
In your opinion, Kai, where do you think that the gender affirming care needs to go in keeping that in mind then?
I think ideally it's that preventative stage. Like it would appear the vast majority of the time, at least in my own systematic review that kind of fits into all of this, that generally the eating disorder develops to suppress puberty that is gone unsuppressed, or to change the characteristics of the body because gender affirming care couldn't be accessed. If those barriers weren't there, then ideally people wouldn't turn to these other behaviors to cope. But when those disordered eating behaviors have already begun and escalated, I think it can't be treat the eating disorder, then give gender affirming care. It needs to be a component of it, because otherwise people, they look better on paper because their weight is restored, usually in a hospital context. But their dysphoria is much worse, and their other people's perceptions of them may be less affirming. It's something that we keep hearing in our research, that people leave treatment and they don't pass anymore because so much of our perception of gender is about body shape and weight.
Yeah. So we're finding out all these kind of scarier, what we're now knowing. What we are wanting to do really is to prevent that. So we are wanting to create more healthy or healthier eating and or exercise behaviours in the population, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like, step one is knowing what's wrong, what's not working. And step two is really what we do about that. And what's really cool about our projects is that we've kind of done both those things.
Yeah.
We figured out some of what's wrong, and we also have asked about what trans people themselves with the experience of treatment feel should have been different and what can be better in the future. The clinicians who provide that treatment and what they think could be better.
Yeah.
And then continuing to kind of understand those experiences and what works and what doesn't.
Yep.
So we're getting seemingly closer and closer to having a good idea of what really good treatment would and hopefully will look like. A lot of our behavior around food and exercise is inherently very gendered by society. What foods we eat, even if it's not in a disordered eating context, is often influenced by who we are and how we feel about our gender. Ask any dude about how they feel about the idea of being a vegetarian, and they'll find that a threat to their masculinity often, because we think of eating meat as being masculine. And we think of exercising and gymming as being masculine too. And so those things already influence all of our behavior and experience. But when someone's gender diverse and has had to kind of fight for their gender to be recognized, those things might be even more important and have a lot more weight in someone's life. And so there's a unique relationship to eating and exercise that we can't just apply the models we use with everyone else and assume they'll fit, but rather that we need to kind of think about those unique experiences and how those things matter to trans and gender diverse people.
I think as a cis woman, clinician, exercise physiologist, from my last 4 years working within the community has been fantastic. I have learnt so much. I'm really grateful for the experiences and the knowledge that I've learnt over the last 4 years. I think I would like other clinicians to treat anyone that comes into their practice as a whole, really trying to understand, well, what has your experiences been, whether that's eating or exercise, and really providing that person-centred care to that person as a whole.
Yeah. I think sometimes in working with and doing research around gender diversity, it seems that a lot of people get a better understanding of their own gender and question the sort of assumed rules and throw the rule book away a little bit, even if for a lot of cis people that means kind of doing a giant lap back to where they started and just being more sure of where they sit. But I think working There's a lot of maybe hesitancy or anxiety about getting it wrong in working with trans people and gender diverse people. And there's no need to be, it's you'll learn lots from working with us. And we're just another group of people that like exercise and eating like everyone else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I really love sharing the knowledge, like what we've done today, and really also teaching the students coming up through the programs and within Thriving that we work with as well, and really just upskilling them and giving them more knowledge and how to best improve and support the people that we work with through exercise.
Yeah, and I think it's becoming more common in research, but something that I think this team has always done really well, and I'm very grateful for, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here, is like really being dedicated to incorporating lived experience in the research process, not just as consultants, but actually as researchers. I got to join on as a research assistant very early in the project, and that's led to a whole PhD for me. And it's not a tokenistic kind of involvement like some research is. It's actually, there is a value of having people who are insiders involved in designing the questions and knowing what kind of questions to ask and where the trends are that are worth exploring. And I think we've gotten to some really interesting places like the Binder study by being able to tap into what's happening in the community and getting that community trust, because there is like a really genuine engagement.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're all very community, collaborative, passionate-minded researchers.
Yeah, so much enthusiasm.
Yeah.
We're not just sitting in the lab being like typing away. We're actually engaging in practical programs in the community and wanting to see implementation and meaningful impact on people's actual lives, not just papers in journals.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Papers in journals is nice, but impact,
getting it done,
being more broad is good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, currently within Thriving in Motion, we do have a Youth Moves program. So that does specifically work with trans and gender diverse adults as well. So that program has actually been going for 3 years in the community now. So it's fantastic. So we have adults coming to the program from 15 years of age through to 25 years of age. And they present with lots of wonderful, unique qualities as well. And that is more of a mixed movement type of program that we're running for the participants. And we definitely have people with lived experience who are delivering the program as well. So we really value that really highly as well within Thriving in Motion, because not only they can help us to tailor and design the program, but it also acts as a really lovely peer mentor for the participants who are in the program as well. So that's one application that we're doing currently in the community.
Yeah, and I think implementation of exercise in the gender diversity service at the Children's Hospital would be nice.
Yes.
It might be something that's on the horizon, or I believe in progress now.
Yeah. So we're also, as part of my PhD project, we are doing a clinical trial. Thanks, Kai. We are running a 12-week program. We're just about to wrap up our first 12-week program with some young adolescents who've engaged in services at the gender diversity services at the hospital, which has been fantastic. So again, we've worked on their team building skills, their strength and conditioning, their sports skills, so their physical literacy, those kind of things. We have really seen the improvement not only in the amount of physical activity that they're doing, but also the social aspects, the psychological aspects, the camaraderie within them. And it's just amazing because the feedback from them and the parents is that they've never participated in a program that is specifically designed for them. So particularly, as you said, in Perth, little old Perth, WA, there's not many programs specifically designed like that. We're trying to improve the model of care at the Children's Hospital. And then if all goes well, try to improve and do similar programs Australia-wide in the other children's hospitals. So, yeah, it's been a fantastic program and a couple of programs that we're running in the community.
Yeah, and I guess on my end, you know, I've done a bunch of seminars talking about the findings to clinicians who work in eating disorders in hospitals and beyond. I've been lucky enough to do a bunch of workshops with parents of trans kids who are concerned about their kids' eating behaviors and kind of troubleshoot really practically based on our findings what we can do to support those parents. 5 million different presentations to different services who are desperate for this information and want to understand beyond just what the paper says, kind of what practically they can do for their specific service, which is pretty cool. And that's kind of gone from all across Australia, this demand for this information, but also I've gotten lucky enough to do some presentations to people in the UK and the US who also find that we are the people they want to ask in the whole world about this, who like feel have the information they need. I think there's many things I would love to see implemented that are not quite there yet, but lots of things I think in eating disorder treatment that I can see making a huge difference. There will be many recommendations when my systematic review gets hopefully published to kind of look at in terms of all the different things we could be doing better. But I think the key one is like realistically, people will not be generally getting better unless we start incorporating gender-affirming care, including gender-affirming medical care, into people's inpatient eating disorder treatment and treatment more broadly. That's got to be a key piece of it. And people's gender should be affirmed in all of the ways in their treatment, or it's potentially going to be kind of backwards, potentially a lack of progress, not just stagnant, but actually worse. I think I've got lucky to do a lot of presentations to schools as well, because there is kind of a question mark there sometimes about how do we talk about body image and puberty and things in a way that actually is not harmful to the trans young people. One finding in my systematic review is that several of the case studies, the young people started suppressing their puberty through disordered eating after having a health class where they learned that that could happen. And so they learned the behavior from their school. So how we talk about puberty needs to be without the assumption that puberty is happy and natural and good for all people. And that when we talk about body image more broadly, kind of body positivity and learning to love your body and a body acceptance framework is not just going to be not applicable, but potentially harmful when we're talking to a group of people that includes young people who are trans, but also young people who are neurodivergent or have chronic pain or have different disabilities that make them feel that being comfortable in their body may be not something they can reach. And so I guess the approach I always kind of challenge and say is like a body neutral approach seems to work much better for most people. And an approach of sort of what I call behaviors, not bodies. So focusing more on getting enough food nutrition-wise, getting movement that feels good, and that not being about bodily change and appearance change, but rather just about kind of meeting those needs, what we call in like the autistic community, kind of taking care of the meat suit. Having that more pragmatic approach rather than everything being about how everything looks. Even if we're challenging that people don't need to look a certain way, we're still emphasizing people's looks in a way. And so actually kind of going beyond that to who people are as people and our achievements and value and so forth beyond what we look like.
Yeah, there's so many things that you could think of, isn't there? I think some of my quick tips for other teachers, principals, clinicians would be just being able to create a physical activity or exercise space that's safe for them, that values community over the competition. A lot of our community sports or physical activity spaces are very competitive, westernised, very binary options. So let's just look at the community. Let's just get people active to start with. in creating a space, an inclusive space for them. And then lastly, as you said, Kai is just taking the person as a whole. So looking at the bigger picture and looking at their needs and thinking outside of the box to be able to support them that best affirms their gender and best provides the care that they need.
Yeah, it's creative problem solving rather than looking for the standard manual option for what to do. Because every person is different and a manual is just too specific to fit for everybody. In the world of sort of dietitians and nutrition, it's amazing how much creativity there is about using occupational therapy tools to make things better for people rather than trying to change their behavior and tell them they're doing things wrong. It's work around it, find an accommodation that works. And with exercise at a school level in particularly, in the context of people who might have body image concerns going on, what we find generally is that the kind of exercise that people do matters. So being in a gym and looking at yourself the whole time and things that allow you to emphasize your own body are probably not great for people. What we find is people who've achieved successful recovery from an eating disorder and do lots of exercise with that tend to hike or scuba dive or do something that is community oriented and about being with other people or about having an experience that's kind of a, wow, look what my body can do rather than, wow, look what it can look like. So really kind of tailoring the programs in a school setting to be not about being competitive or about kind of being able to focus in on the body in an appearance manner, but about having a good positive experience that is social and that is fun. I feel the misconception that is very fair is that sport and exercise is not fun. And it can definitely not be fun if it's done wrong, but joyful movement is possible. It's about finding what kind of movement and exercise feels fun and good for that person.
Perfect.